Hello and welcome to Under SF Alternative Cultures. I'm AJ Datanagan.
And I'm Laura Yano, and today's episode is about San Francisco's LGBTQ culture and community.
Now, LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. This acronym is used to represent the diversity of sexuality and gender identity in our society. It also emphasizes the need to acknowledge all parts of the community and culture.
It's also essential to stay educated on all parts of the community, even those that aren't in the spotlight of the mainstream media.
That's why we are devoting the first part of this episode to learning the extensive history of the LGBTQ culture in SF.
Our team spoke to Joshua O'Neill, a longtime San Francisco resident and SFSU human sexuality professor.
Joshua will illustrate the timeline of the LGBTQ community and how it has grown into the broad spectrum it is today.
Gay culture in San Francisco kind of blossomed around World War II when men that were serving in the armed forces would come back to San Francisco. San Francisco was a major base, a station where people would come back to. And it was a lot of young men who were in their 20s, they were bachelors, and they didn't want to necessarily go back to their small towns. A lot of them were gay. Then in the 60s and 70s, we had folks like Sylvester, who was a disco diva, who was trans and from San Francisco, who performed and kind of created this queer culture in San Francisco, like this idea of this fabulous, amazing human being that was a performance people really enjoyed and loved. And then they started getting this idea that San Francisco was amazing, like disco culture, queer and fabulous and over the top, which it was, I think. We also saw folks like Harvey Milk in the 70s who were politicians who were creating movement for gay folks as a representative, right? Someone who was connected with queer communities but also was able to leverage his privilege as like a white male in society as a politician. The Tenderloin has been the heart of queer culture in San Francisco since probably the 1900s. It's where a lot of the outcasts, folks that were substance users, transsexuals, queers, people that were sort of looked down upon or oppressed in society found a safe space in the heart of the city. However, there was a lot of policing that was going on in those spaces, especially in the 60s. They hung out at this Compton cafeteria, which was a place that they would just gather together as a community when they were off work or when they were just kind of between shifts. And the police came in to give them a hard time and hassle them. They decided to stand up against the police and actually kind of rioted. And it was the first time in San Francisco that gay rights became a thing, where people were really like pressing back and trying to fight for their own rights. And even to this day, I think that San Francisco is seen from outsiders as this safe space, as a gay place to go, as a gay mecca, really. And a lot of people will give up everything that they have in the small towns that they've grown up because they've heard about San Francisco either in travel magazines or on TV shows or in music videos or wherever else you get this like messaging in social media that says that San Francisco is really open and gay and exciting, and so that they leave their lives behind in order to chase this dream of being in a place that's accepting and queer like San Francisco is.
Now that we have a better understanding of how the LGBTQ community within SF has developed, it is important to learn some of the commonly used terms.
In this next segment, Joshua will walk us through the main terms used within the LGBTQ community. He will also give us a deeper insight into the sexual orientation spectrum, the meaning of gender identity, and expression and the importance of gender pronouns.
In a heteronormative world, sexual orientation is generally straight or gay. Bisexual is another sexual identity or orientation. The way that we experience and express our desires, our feelings, our fantasies, our emotions, our connections with others. So sexual orientation is really about who and what we were attracted to in the world around us. We're born in these bodies, which we refer to as your sex. It's either male or female. But that's not even true. It's not binary. There's a lot of different bodies and they develop differently. So there's intersex bodies which are more ambiguous. They have both male and female specific parts. But in many cases, you have like a male specific and a female specific body. That's sex, you're male or female. Where gender identity is different because it really has less to do with your body and your genitals, and it's more about who you are and how you express yourself in the world. Gender expression is how you wear your gender identity, how you want others to see you. So there's things that you can do or manipulate, things you can say, or ways that you can act in order for people to read you as one gender or another, or somewhere within that spectrum. Transgender is really complicated, and I think in some ways trans individuals are often seen in the media right now as either born with a body that is not in line with their current gender identity. So for example, I may be born with a male specific body, but I don't necessarily feel very male or man, and is the way that society defines it. So if I don't identify with or connect with the body that I have, then I'm somewhere on that trans spectrum. In a lot of cases, people that are born in bodies that they don't really connect with, they will often transition into a different gender identity. But I also want to refrain from the assumption that everyone who's trans wants to transition into the opposite gender, because some people that are trans are still embracing that spectrum and don't necessarily want to transition into being a female or a woman in society, or transition into being a man in society. They just want to be themselves and be authentic. Pronouns are the ways that we refer to like men and women in our society. So for example, I prefer masculine pronouns, which is he and him. Sometimes femme people prefer she and her. And then we also like to use gender neutral pronouns like them and they. So if you're talking about someone and you don't know what their pronoun is, then maybe you can just refer to them or they as you're having that conversation, as a way to respect them. And instead of putting your own assumptions onto their gender, allowing them the opportunity to kind of be themselves. But you can also just introduce yourself by saying, hey, I'm Joshua, I prefer masculine pronouns, him, he, what's your name and what are your pronouns? And that's a really respectful way of soliciting that information if you really need to know. Again, I go back to the default, which is in most cases, you just ask someone what their name is and then call them by their name, and that's what they would appreciate the most.
A tremendous thank you to Joshua for shedding light on topics not always within the spotlight of the LGBTQ community.
After the break, we'll take a closer look at the AIDS life cycle, a bike race for HIV/AIDS awareness and activism. See you soon.
Welcome back. For 23 years, San Francisco has held the AIDS Life Cycle, a 545-mile bike ride that stretches from San Francisco to LA. The ride raises money and awareness for HIV and AIDS research.
We got a chance to sit down with 3 influential volunteers for the AIDS life cycle. We'll get a better understanding of the ride itself, along with testaments of what exactly the AIDS life cycle means to the riders.
Hi, I'm Brett Snyder. I identify as a cisgendered gay male. I moved here 8 years ago to go to law school at UC Hastings, and now I'm an immigration attorney.
Okay, I'm Tanner. I identify as bisexual.
Gina Shalaba. I'm 38 years old. I am an attorney and I am a legal writer for Thomson Reuters. And I identify as a lesbian.
What happens when you get a lot of like LGBT people together for a week and then drive them to do crazy athletic things and then put them together in tents?
I also participate in the AIDS Life Cycle, which is a 545-mile bike ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles.
Each one of the riders meets a $3,000 fundraising goal, and that goes towards HIV research as well as running AIDS Life Cycle. And also the roadies are encouraged to fundraise. I try to raise at least $1,000 each year. And at the very end, when they reach LA, there's a parade. It's practically a parade and a procession, and it's incredible.
Is raising money to raise awareness and money to end AIDS. That's what I'm writing for.
It's really sort of blossomed from this time of people not really knowing anything about the disease and people living with it, and a time where the medication really wasn't there for people to even live long and productive lives, to now there's so much like hope and community, and it's sort of become this huge event where both gay and straight people have come together.
Like electric energy when you get to the Cow Palace. Like people were so pumped up for it, and it just seemed like something I really wanted to be a part of. One of my very, very close friends, when we were young, we were in our early 20s, he was diagnosed with HIV, and it impacted me in a way because I, before that, never knew anyone who had HIV, so it was more personal for me, it became more real for me, so I write in honor of him as well.
Back in 1988, when my brother was diagnosed, it was a death sentence. You were going to die. And so in that lifetime, people were talking like, oh my God, AIDS. Who are these people? Why are they getting this disease? Why are they dying off so much? And next thing you know, society didn't like the gay community even more so. August 20th was when my brother died. And so on that day, I sent out an email to all my friends saying I'm stepping it up. Biking was my brother's passion. I signed up the next day.
I think that one of the things that's happened already is that people are being more open about their statuses. I think that part of the sort of humanizing of people who are dealing with AIDS is people have come out and said, I'm positive, I take my medication, I live my life, I try to stay healthy, here are the things that affect me, but I'm a person and I'm not stricken to a hospital bed like I'm living my life.
I've come into contact now with numerous people that openly identify as positive. And there's even a team called Positive Peddlers.
I think the world needs to know that it's still out there. And this is why we're writing. And this is the reason why we're trying to educate people.
The way I explained it to my mom was, you support breast cancer research, right? And she said, well, of course. And I said, well, I support HIV/AIDS research because it's something that, while I'm certain there are a million other causes, it's something that's very close to home.
And every team, I think, that rides on AIDS Life Cycle has a purpose. They have something, whether there's a team called the Funky Monkeys, and they're just, some people have a lot of fun, some people are doing it in honor of somebody that's passed away. And it's nice being on a team because then you have the extra camaraderie of everybody there and everybody helping each other out. The hope would be, for HIV, for LGBT issues, for anything, just tolerance and understanding and acceptance. You can live a normal life. My friend that I mentioned, he lives a very normal life. That is not a death sentence, and we're getting closer to finding a cure for it.
Safe spaces have always been an essential part of the LGBTQ community.
A safe space within the LGBT community allows those who identify with and support the community to gather without the fear of oppression or judgment.
Now, here at San Francisco State University, the Queer Alliance serves as a safe space. The Queer Alliance is an all-inclusive group of faculty, students, and staff right here at SFSU.
The Queer Alliance is a club for students of all sexualities, genders, and ethnicities. We spoke to the club secretary, Stuart Castaneda, to see why clubs like the Alliance are so important.
My name's Stuart Castaneda. I'm part of the Queer Alliance and I'm the secretary. The Queer Alliance is a social safe space at school. It provides a safe place for students, all ages, ethnicities, any sexual orientation, any gender, a place where they're not discriminated, and you get to meet a lot of friends over there, and you get to go to other social outings kind of thing. Yeah. We were here for a very long time. Like, we've even gotten awards on our wall that are up to 1990s, around there. Yeah. It's really important to have the Queer Alliance and other organizations like this for students because it just provides a safe space for most students where even they feel not comfortable as coming out to other people or meeting other friends, and I feel like the Queer Alliance provides that for them, that safe space where they can feel comfortable being themselves. It's made my experience at college great. Like, it gives, like, people say, oh, college is going out to parties and everything like that, but being in the Queer Alliance, I think it's enough. It gave me, like, I actually met my boyfriend there. So our club is located in Cesar Chavez, mezzanine floor. We're the Rainbow Door.
Welcome back. One area not commonly discussed within the LGBTQ community is the prejudice and discrimination experienced with the community itself. This next piece will explain the concept further along with shedding a little more light on minorities with the LGBTQ community. When we come back, AJ will be joined in the studio with two very special guests. Stay tuned.
My name is Ari. I identify as queer and I prefer she, her pronouns.
My name's Cody Dolan. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I identify as transmasculine.
People within the LGBTQ community they have this sort of expectation where it's like you're either gay, lesbian, bisexual, and that's about it. Like, everybody else that falls within the umbrella term of queer, like, that's just too much. Like, you need to pick one or the other or both. And even within that, like, lesbian and gay people don't even believe that bisexuals exist, and that in itself is like, how can you say that when you experience oppression because you like someone of the same sex? Like, why can't this person like both?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discrimination. I think that whenever you have a group of people, there's going to be a people that want to be on top, even if they are all different from like societal norms. So in the LGBT case, it's going to be like the gay white man that's always going to be on top.
And then even also like in the Castro, it's predominantly white gay men. So if you're a lesbian or a trans individual, you're not really seeing any sort of exposure, because as much as people assume like, oh, the Castro is like where everyone goes, it's like really just gay white men and older white men as well. So there's not very many young people, trans people, people of color, lesbians.
I think it's okay to have their own separate spaces outside of that, because again, if you're a trans woman and you want to be in a lesbian only space, you're going to find a lot of discrimination in that, rather than just being in a trans friendly lesbian space where everyone there is accepting and you know that you're going to be accepted and no one's going to discriminate against you.
It's important to have safe spaces for minorities within the queer community, just as it's important to have safe spaces for minorities in any community, because they experience things that the majority doesn't experience. Being a woman, you would experience sexism, or like being a person of color, you would experience racism, and then being a queer person, you would usually experience homophobia. And then so if you are a female person of color who's queer, you're experiencing 3 different types of oppression, intersectionality.
Safe spaces to me, or like where I go to feel safe, is I surround myself with people more than a specific area. So instead of, there are support groups. I know there's a lot like in the Castro. There's a clinic in the Castro specifically for trans youth, but outside of youth, there's not a lot of like specific general spaces where you can go, like support groups, like talking circles, like those are mainly geared towards youth. In a society where we like to label people, those labels create norms, and anyone outside of those, they're just gonna, intentional or not, they're gonna be discriminated against.
Welcome back to Under SF Alternative Cultures. With me right now are Alyha Love and Cali Rose Morales. Both are artists and a part of the LGBTQ community. Alyha, Cali, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Tell us a little more about yourselves and what do you do?
Curate shows and parties, basically, to showcase trans women of color, femme-identified people, people who just like aren't
people of color.
Yeah, POC, people who aren't like really represented in like mainstream media.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about being underrepresented. So tell me a little bit about like the early goings of your careers.
I think it all started with our friend / mother. We call her mother, Jasmine Infinity. She is a DJ, model, trans woman of color, and she had this like vision of us being like an art collective, mostly DJ collective, like trans femme DJ collective, and we like branched off from there.
She was basically kind of like the catalyst that brought us all together.
All right, so tell me a little bit about New World Disorder. How did the idea originate and how did it evolve over time?
Well, like I said, Jasmine Infinity was kind of like the person who got us all together. So we got together and created this idea of inclusiveness.
Yeah, like it was like a creative space / haven for artists in the Bay Area who were like, you know, trans or people of color or queer.
Femme-identified, just people who are kind of basically like us. But then we also,
LGBTQ.
But then we also like to, I mean, ultimately, it's an event for everyone to come and kind of just have fun, basically, because that's kind of like the point of it. It's just to showcase artists who
have a good time.
Yeah. Like to have a good time.
And why do you guys think that it strives here in the city?
I guess because it's San Francisco. There's a large LGBTQ community, and I think San Francisco was kind of like a place where everybody kind of associated that, you know, we're more free here.
I would also say that we're like in a really good time where there's lots of more like female DJs. Like it's a very, I don't know, like the trans femme like topic is like really big right now. And I think it's just, we're like in the right place at the right time.
Perfect. And so, Alyha, you also do some modeling. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, recently I just shot with this clothing company called Eros Mortis, and we just did a photo shoot, you know, showcasing their brand. And I started modeling when I was 16, so, and it's not like a serious thing. I kind of just do it as a hobby. And whenever like any of my photographer friends or people who like contact me, I don't like go out searching for opportunities.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah.
And Cali, why don't you tell us a little more about your involvement with fashion? How did you get started?
Well, I first started going to school for fashion. I dropped out though. I don't know, life happened. I had to like transition and stuff, and I'm looking to get back into that. But for now, I'm just, you know, I'm DJing on the side, and we're doing these like parties, and which consist of, you know, music and fashion, and I really incorporate that with my life every day.
If you don't mind telling us, what are like some of the obstacles that you faced before and that you face even now?
Well, I mean, as party goers or party girls, professional party girls, we would go to parties, and a lot of DJs would be like male and white, and so that's why we kind of chose to represent who we are and kind of just provide space for people of color and trans, femme-identified people. And yeah, I think the majority of this society that we live in is ran by white males, and we're just here to challenge that, basically.
I would also say, like, I don't know, there's also like a lot of like negative connotations towards trans women still, and a lot of society think that, you know, trans women are often just sex workers and, you know, this and that. But I think it's interesting that we're like out there being female, you know, trans femme DJs and artists, and, you know, showing the world that we
are not just
categorized
as one thing.
You know.
Yeah.
There's always going to be obstacles in your ladies' ways. So how do you get past that?
We support each other,
Yeah.
and I think that's like very important. Is that we need like a really strong support system to kind of like come together and talk about whatever we need to talk about, and we also pour ourselves into our art. We take our real life experiences and make music out of it, and we throw parties out of it, and we like make fun of it sometimes. So I think we also use humor as a way to kind of
cope
counteract
with things.
counteract that those obstacles that we face as trans women of color.
So you talked about being supported by Jasmine and, you know, supporting each other, but do you ladies reach out to like other people in the LGBTQ community and like try and help others like Jasmine helped you guys out?
Yeah, well, I think by us throwing a fence, that is our way of doing so, by providing a safe space for anybody really to come and have a good time. For me personally, I believe that dancing is really good for the soul, and it's kind of like a way to give thanks to the universe. And I feel so hippy dippy over here, but that's what I like to believe, is that, you know, when people come out and dance, it's like creating community for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Congrats on your success, and we definitely look forward to hearing from you guys soon.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Under SF. I'm AJ Datanagan, signing off for the beautiful Laura Ariano. See you next week on Under SF Alternative Cultures.
She's a perfect tissue. Rock her hips, control her hips, and drop it down like it's nothing. She just like an hourglass. You see how fast an hour passes. Time flies when I'm on that, but I won't put our shit on blue. Working like a pro, sitting watching me go. Do a thing out on the floor. She bouncing fast, she shake me slow, so sexual, incredible. She beautiful, she edible. I do